Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vagan Muradian here at the Halifax International Security Forum in Nova Scotia, Canada. One of the world's leading gatherings of military, security, international aid, civil society, and thought leaders from around the planet. And we have with us Darrell Bricker, who is one of those thought leaders as the CEO of Ipsos, which is the world's leading polling company. Darrell, every year I talk to you, I walk away having learned stuff, some of which is startling and some of which is enlightening.
Well, I'm going to try not to startle you today. We'll just go for enlightening.
So every year with the opening of the Halifax Forum, which is really kind of a family gathering every year, which is really what's special about it. You know, you get edified, but you also connect with old friends that you haven't seen for a year or maybe even longer. But you guys always started off with a major poll on global trends. Talk to us about the poll you guys released today at the forum.
Well, this is our 8th annual poll that we've done for the Halifax Security Forum. So we interviewed over 18,000 people in 24 countries and talked to them about a whole series of security issues.
And tell us what some of the key takeaways were. For example, the sense that internationalization is a negative thing. You actually have found polling data that says that actually many people understand that what the value of internationalization is and the benefits that accrues to local communities.
Specifically when it comes to trade, you find very, very high levels of support consistently all over the world for the impact of international trade on local communities. So the belief that what's driving populism in the world today is, economics and trade, well, there's probably an element of that, but it's also a much bigger agenda that probably has a lot more to do with nationalism and people's reaction to policies like immigration as opposed to specifically about strictly economics.
And where did you see the gains? Because that number is up by, I think, 7%, you said, or something like that?
It's about 8% up worldwide, but it's up everywhere. We even see it up in the United States. Ironically enough, in the UK, where it's up into the mid-90s, it's taken a big jump because people are worried about the possibility of trade relationships from the United Kingdom after Brexit. But the truth is the Brexit vote was never really about trade anyway. It was really about the issue of, as I said before, immigration and social change.
And talk to us about some of the other security and defense related questions that you ask, which you guys ask every year.
Well, what we ask every year, we have a series of different threats that we present to the people in the survey and say, which ones of these are you most worried about? At the top of the list again this year is the possibility of being hacked.
Wow. So cyber is really at the top of everybody's list.
Cyber is right at the top of the list, followed by domestic terrorism, and then after that, the possibility of somewhere in the world a nuclear, biological, or chemical attack taking place. Now, we also ask people how well prepared they think their governments are for dealing with these various issues, and the ones that are at the top of the list are the ones that they believe that their governments are the least prepared to deal with.
And for example, what are those countries?
All over the world, consistently. But when you just look at Canada and the United States, who I'm sure is going to be the most interest to your listeners, in the United States, the one issue that's a bit different is people are concerned about the impact of natural disasters. So it tends to be cyber attacks and natural disasters. Again, not feeling that the government's particularly well prepared to deal with it.
Last year, I submit anybody should actually go back and look at the interview we did with you last year, which was edifying about how you sort of looked at the election results in every single precinct in the United States and found that Donald Trump won every single precinct by every precinct he needed to win, he won. You and I were talking, and you said that you'd continued looking at some of those results after the election. Since this is what you do, what were some of the other takeaways as you've reflected back on those electoral results? What are some of your other conclusions and just thoughts that you've come up with?
So when you take a look at the issue of populism, it was obviously a big driver of support for Donald Trump. The thing that really jumps out of the data when you take a look at it is the significance of nationalism and concern about things like, for example, demographic change in the United States and how closely they are linked to his level of support. There's this belief, and I think it's because it's easier for us to think about things this way, that economics is a big driver of this. And we even heard on a panel a couple of minutes ago, well, this is about income inequality and people feeling that they're being left out of the economic bonanza that's happening in the world. There's a little bit of that, but it's not nearly as big in terms of people's support levels for Donald Trump as things that relate to nationalism and change in the United States. That idea of making America great again or being a real American is a big driver of support for Donald Trump.
CBC is about to do a live hit, so I'm going to ask you one last question. What's the big sleeper issue that you're paying attention to that you don't think enough people are paying attention to?
I really do think it's the issue of immigration. This idea of cultural change taking place as a result of immigration. And it's not just a factor in the United States, it's a factor in very many countries around the world. And I think, even we saw on the panel upstairs, it sort of gets mentioned, then gets pushed away in favor of this economic argument, because I think that elites are really attuned to the idea of looking at these issues in economic terms. It's the cultural things that makes them kind of squeamish, and they really don't have an easy answer to that, and they really don't even necessarily want to acknowledge it. And that's going to be the thing that's going to be haunting the proceedings at this conference, but also politics over the space of probably the next 5 or 6 years.
Darrell, always a pleasure. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.